some basic creed, a very basic level. You don't have to, you have to learn like how we do it or something. But
So you guys basics.
I mean, if I had to do all of it, you guys set up this over. Well, okay, you guys can sit wherever you want. So once you're adult, it comes down. My age. Our distinguished speaker, Mr. Hamza Yusuf.
I'd like to welcome all of you today for this lecture, and we're so honored to have you and to have Shaykh Hamza Yusuf here. Shaykh Hamza Yusuf, for those who didn't know him, he embraced Islam in the early 1970s, and he studied all different topics of Islam in United Arab Emirates, North Africa, and North Africa and West Africa. He also established the Al-Zaytuna Institute in 1996, which and they teach Islamic classes there and Arabic language classes. The topic today is constructing an American Muslim identity, Islam in a postmodern world. So, inshallah, Shaykh Hamza Yusuf will start the topic and thank you very much.
All right. Name of God, merciful, compassionate. First of all, it's a small group, so you can talk and people can interact. I'll just maybe put a little bit out to get a discussion going. Identity is very interesting phenomenon about being human. I was actually just reading throughout that there's really nice material there about the Big Bang, and they took it off NASA's website. They were talking about the two fundamental elements of the Big Bang theory. One of them is that is the theory of relativity, that gravity was not a Newtonian absolute. That Newton's idea of gravity was not absolute. It didn't work when we got into the speed of light. So Einstein introduced that, which introduced some interesting problems in understanding how things work. That Newton's laws work in the macro world, but when you go into the quantum world, those laws no longer apply. And the other one was the cosmological principle, which talked about the homogeneity that we live in an isotropic universe. That really it's all one thing. But there's differentiation in it, which has to do more with density of the same material. So one of the interesting things about a lot of mystical experience is that people that go, in most of our world traditions, we have an idea of a sense of oneness, that people experience that, and a loss of identity, the idea that one doesn't feel separate from another. Does anybody know what the word identity, what it actually means, the root word of it? It's a Greek word. Anybody want to take a stab? Because there's other words that are very similar. Nobody? Well, identical is from the same root. It actually means same. It's very odd, isn't it? I mean, you would think it would mean different. Another related word is idiot. Idiotica in Greek. Anybody have an idea what that means? It means separate. So the idiot is the one that's not like everybody else. And these are really kind of pre-modern concepts of what identity was about. Society is about homogeneity. I mean, the universe is isotropic, according to our scientists. It's all the same. But we experience it as being different. So I'm not the chair, but a physicist will tell you, well, actually, you are the chair. If you could go down into the subatomic world, you and the chair are not only united in a field, an electromagnetic field, but you're actually made of the same substance. But we don't experience that. So identity is a paradox. On the one hand, we talk about forming our identity, being I'm a unique individual. Like in our culture, individuality is very important. In pre-modern cultures, community was far more important than individuality. So I'll give you an example. In Arabia, they did a study in Arabia by a corporation, Procter & Gamble. And it was an internal document, and the only reason I know about it is because I have a friend who works for Procter & Gamble who gave me a copy of this internal document. But it was a study of Arab consumers. Because Procter & Gamble is a corporation, what do corporations like to do? Robert? What do corporations like to do? What's the one thing that unites all corporations? Greed. They like to make money. That's the bottom. That we call it the bottom line. Right? Making money. That's what corporations are. They're literally incorporated to make money. And not only are they incorporated to make money, they're actually designed also to prevent the individuals from suffering any losses personally if the corporation collapses. So a very clever sleight of hand, a legal sleight of hand was done in this country in the 1880s, in which corporations were given legal status as a person. So, a corporation has the rights of an individual in U.S. law. Now, what that did is create what's called limited liability. So the individuals that make up the corporation, when the corporation goes bankrupt, they can all go home with their bank accounts intact. It's the corporation that loses, not me. I mean, as a shareholder, I can lose, but I don't lose everything. So corporations like to make money, and the corporate world studies how to make money, how to actually make you want things that you don't need, how to make you buy things that you don't have money to buy, right? Advertising, according to Will Rogers, who was an actor from the 1930s, Will Rogers said advertising is designed to get you to buy things you don't need with money you don't have. That's the whole basis of advertising. So they studied the Arabs, and they categorized the Arabs into 4 types. Us, me, us, and me. The first group were older Arabs. The us Arabs, this is on the Arabian Peninsula, so if you're from Egypt or Jordan, it's going to be slightly different. But the us Arabs were people from the older generation in which the community was much more important, and the individual would always sublimate his own needs for the needs of the community. So it was us. The us, me Arabs were around 40 and above, where the me would still be willing to give up the me for the us. All right? And the me, us Arabs, whereas the me, the us was important, but the me was more important. And the me were the under 20s. This is the emerging Arab consumer group. And these were people that were completely self-centered and could care less about the culture and the society. So that individuation is something that corporations thrive on, is creating this sense of, I'm unique, I'm original. Clothing, for instance. A lot of people don't realize that in most cultures, people pretty much dress the same about 70 years ago. In America, you know, people wore the same type shirts, they wore the same type breeches, women wore the same basic type of dresses, and there was a sameness to the way people dressed. But when you want to create an industry like fashion, and you want to convince people to buy lots of different clothes so you have to look different every day, then you create a fashion industry and you give people a sense of being unique. I'm an individual. I'm expressing my individuality. So that's very important in terms of corporate identity formation. And these are all things studied. If you want to see a brilliant documentary, which you can, even on the internet, you can see it. It's called The Century of the Self, which goes into how this was done. If you want to read a book about it, because I know some people still read books, if you want to read a book about it, there's a book by William Leach called The Land of Desire, which is about how Americans were turned into consumers. Because at the turn of the century, most Americans were not. They were actually thrifty people. They didn't believe in spending money they didn't have. And even the money they had, they thought you should only spend it on what you needed. You shouldn't be extravagant, because there were a lot of virtues in the culture that looked down upon wasting money or just buying something for the sake of buying it. Consumerism. Many people at Christmas time actually made presents that they gave other people, far more meaningful than just going to Borders and buying something and getting it wrapped with Borders and taking it and you give it. It's a commercial transaction. So identity in the pre-modern world is very different from what identity is today. Now the goal of many pre-modern societies was actually an attempt to sublimate the ego. And that's why most religious virtues are actually quite counter-instinctive. They go against nature. If you look at children, we have positive qualities of children, which we call childlike. So when you see a child, they're innocent. We say that's so beautiful, that innocence in children. So that's childlike. But then we have another quality of children, which we call childish, which is the negative aspects of children. Children are greedy. They don't like to share their toys. And that's more a male problem, interestingly enough, than a female problem. And there's a lot of social science to support that, even in adult males and females. Adult females tend to be more interconnected and tend to have broader social relations. Even in the corporate world, there's a lot of what they call evolutionary biology that's indicating that a lot of the income disparities between men and women in Western cultures, despite the fact that there's been a lot of progress towards more equality, a lot of the income disparity has to do with the fact that women are less competitive than men. They're more cooperative. And so they're just not out there trying to get those raises as hard as the men are. And so that aspect of their nature, which is quite positive in religious terms, that quality is actually considered a virtue in religious terms, but in capitalistic terms, it's a vice. Because the more competitive you are, the farther you go. So a lot of pre-modern identity had to do with cooperation and community, which is sameness. We share things. So you and I have things in common as individuals, right? Individual is from a Latin word that means that which cannot be divided. So individuals make up the aggregate of society. But society is a group of people that really have the same identity, which is human. We're human. Now, being human is actually quite difficult. It's not as easy as we would think it is to be human. We spent the morning with Chief Arvel Looking Horse. Do you know who that is? He's worth looking up on the internet. Anyway, he's a Lakota Indian chief from his tribe. He lives in South Dakota. And there was a documentary done on his ride. He does a ride for 3 weeks every year, December 15th into January. He rides from South Dakota to the site of Wounded Knee, which, does anybody know what Wounded Knee is? Nobody knows Wounded Knee? Come on, what was Wounded Knee?
Didn't the U.S. cavalry slaughter a bunch of unarmed Native Americans?
It was the last Indian massacre in the United States, yeah, 1890. And they were slaughtered by the U.S. cavalry who were there, and there's a lot of different versions about how they ended up killing them all, but they were unarmed. They were doing a ghost dance, which was illegal. Does anybody know when Native Americans got their right to practice Native American religion? Because we have the Constitution. What's the First Amendment? Freedom of worship, right? People have the right to freedom of religion. But if you're not considered an American citizen, does that really appeal? Well, it doesn't. So Native Americans actually were not considered citizens because they were on reservations. So you know when they got their right to actually, it was actually illegal to do Native American religious practice until what year in this country? 1978. Hard to believe, huh? Not hard to believe. Yeah, and what's more troubling is that we don't even know these things. You know, that there's people out there that are in our culture that were here before we, I mean, Kentucky's a Native American name, right? Does anybody know what Kentucky means? Does anybody know what Kentucky means? In Arabic it means be pious. Kentucky. But does anybody know what it means in the native people that were here? Land of blood. And probably because of the reddish earth, but possibly because this area they did not actually live in. It was considered sacred hunting ground. So they hunted here. This area in Louisville, there were mounds here that were actually burial mounds. So they used to bury people here. And actually what Chief Arvel Looking Horse was doing was, because they were destroyed by people who came here, they wiped out these mounds. So he came to kind of re-sacralize the place in their tradition. So we planted a tree this morning. So that's what we were doing, planting a tree out in Founders Square. You know what that is? Founders Square. It's actually confusing. Anyway, we planted a tree there. And he did a ceremony, and what was intriguing to me in the ceremony, he had people face west, and then south, and then east, and then north. And part of tradition, in Native American tradition, was the idea of being oriented to the 4 cardinal directions, to know where you are as an individual. What do you think the cardinal directions do to you as a person? Knowing cardinal, do you know what I mean by cardinal directions? There's 4 cardinal directions, because all pre-modern people viewed the earth as flat. So there were basically 4 cardinal directions. East facing east. So that's why we call it the Orient, because oriented is to know where you are. In other words, you know where the east is. I'm oriented to the east. I know where the Orient is. So you face the east, so that puts to your right, what direction? South. In Arabic it's called Yemen, or Yamin. So that's why Yemen is, when you're facing east, Yemen is to your right side, so that's the south, Yemen. Or the Junub, because you lie on your right side. So when you lie down, you're facing Junub. And then, what is Shema? North. Shema is your left. So that's the left side. What is the west called in Arabic? Gharb, which is from what? But also,
sunset.
there's another more important root. Gharib, what you don't know because it's behind you. You see, so you can't see. So that is cosmologically, all ancient people were oriented to 4 directions. One of the things about if you've ever worked in a hospital, as when a doctor does an assessment of a patient, you know what the first thing he does? Anybody? Or a nurse? You orient the patient to time and place. So you ask them, who's president? George Bush. So now I know you are oriented to time. Right? When Al Gore and George, they were debating who was president, they couldn't use that question, so they used other. But you orient them to time. Who's president? And then you say, where are you? Well, a lot of what ancient tradition was trying to do was orient people to sacred time and sacred place. And that's why in the Christian tradition, you have the hours of the day in which you do prayers. Especially in the Catholic and the Orthodox tradition. It's less so in the Protestant, but in the Catholic and the Orthodox tradition, there are times of the day that are set aside for prayer. So if you're a very devotional Catholic, every day you do a rosary at specific times. You also orient yourself to which direction?
North.
North? Jerusalem. Yeah. All medieval churches are all facing Jerusalem. So that's orientation to sacred place. The same in Islam, you have 5 prayers. That's your sacred time. So to know what time is it? What time is it? It's Dhuhr time. If you don't know that, you're not oriented to sacred time. Which direction is Mecca? Orientation to sacred place. So that was very important in terms of just being an integrated person. Now people are completely disoriented. Most people don't know where east is. If you go in cities today and you ask somebody where east is, most people don't do that. That's why they say turn right, turn left, go down there. If you go to places where people are oriented, they say go east for 2 miles and then go south. And they'll talk like that. A lot of people can't. If you give them those directions, it doesn't mean anything to them. Although we still have to use it on signs, highway such and such east. Now they put compasses in things. So individuality and identity are actually quite different concepts in reality. Now one of the things that I find very intriguing about modern people is we like to think we're individuals, but we're incredibly identical. We watch the same television programs. We watch the same movies. I mean, one of the things about people when they fell in love 50 or 100 years ago, they hadn't already seen all the lines. You know what I mean by that? I mean, how many people have seen films where the guy's telling the girl what he thinks about her? There were people where that was actually an original experience. They hadn't lived through anything like that before. So they could actually say that your eyes are like the stars. And it was the first time he'd ever said that, or even thought of it, and it was the first time she ever heard it. Now people have had all these experiences. They've already been through it vicariously on the screen. They've seen people kiss, they've seen people do all these things. In the pre-modern world, these types of experiences were completely original experiences. So there's a sameness now in experience. People don't really experience things as an individual. They actually experience things as a product. It's already been programmed in them. One of the really interesting things about Heidegger's philosophy. Does anybody know Heidegger? Anybody read him? He's a German philosopher. He has a philosophy in which the only real thing that a person will ever do is uniquely his own or her own. What do you think it is? As an experience. Any guess? Everything. Huh? No. Death. Yeah, that's what he thought. Was death. That death was a completely unique experience. And your own death would be completely unique. Nobody could die for you. Nobody could explain what that experience was like. People can explain to you, everybody's gone to the bathroom. We all know that experience. So, everybody's done this or that. But death, nobody can tell you what it's like to die. It's just something, and that's why in the Quran it says, "Kullu nafsin dha'iqatul maut." Every soul will taste death. It doesn't say every soul will die. It says every soul will taste death, because death is a completely unique experience that you will do on your own, and nobody can really do that for you. So, but that is one of the things that is really unusual about modern people, is that they're so similar, and yet they think they're completely unique. Many of us are just historical products. It's already been pumped into us what to buy. Do you know what Procter & Gamble's motto is in their advertising marketing department? From the cradle to the grave. Right? You buy our products when they're used on you when you're born, used on you when you die. You buy them all. You know what they found you know why people go to gas stations? They did this study, like Exxon and Chevron. You know what they found out why people actually prefer certain stations over others? They remember when they were kids, their parents going into it. So they have these experiences. So people that would like prefer a Chevron over a Shell, and nothing to do with gas. It was what they remembered as a child. So what did they do? They started making toys. So when you bought a certain amount of gas, so that the child would have this experience. Same with McDonald's. When you go to McDonald's, they start putting these toy things. That wasn't all just to get the kids off your back. It was actually for those kids to associate going to McDonald's with a very positive experience. So that as they grew older, it would kind of be like this place to go back to, and you'd have that feel-good feeling. That's what they wanted. So it's very important. Now that's all manipulation, but people are manipulated today, incredibly. And most of them don't even know it. They don't have a clue how deeply they're being manipulated. They're buying things, and they don't know why they're buying them. They're buying them because product placement. Corporations pay a lot of money to put products in films. So, and you'll notice like when Tom Cruise moves you see the Ray-Ban symbol, and pretty soon the guys are going out buying Ray-Bans, and they don't really know why. They don't want to look like him, because apparently he gets whatever he wants. So, anyway, in terms of identity, the ultimate Muslim goal in the religion of Islam is to enter into a state of submission and to actually conquer the identity as much as possible, ego. To actually, aslama in Arabic has two meanings. One is to enter into a state of submission or peace, but the other is to die. Aslama nafsa, give up the ghost. So the idea of the death of identity, death of the ego, is a very important concept in all of our world traditions. And everyone wants to hold on to their identity. Nobody wants to give that up. And recognizing the sameness of the human condition. We all share the same condition. One thing all of us share in this room, outside of our humanity, the one thing we all share, we all have parents. Nobody in here came in the world without, if you did, I want to talk to you after this. We all came into the world with parents. I mean, even test tube babies have to have donors. We haven't cloned it yet. The and then we all die. These are two major shared experiences that all of us have to go through. We came into the world and we're going to go out in the world. And life, what happens in between is really, in terms of religious tradition, it's really meant to be a preparation for the next stage of the journey. So, for instance, the Prophet Muhammad said that I am like a stranger who stopped to sit under a tree, gain some shade in this world. And I'll go on. And the thing about shade is moving, shifting constantly. And he also said, be in the world, be in the world as if you were a stranger. Or a transient, just somebody who's just passing through. So having that understanding is very difficult for us because we tend to like to think that we're going to be around for a while. So does anybody want to add or subtract or ask any questions?
I would like your reflection on the better thing. People are sleeping until they die, and their death waits for them. And does it relate to if our life in this world is the unconscious and we become conscious upon death? And that really relates to Heidegger's notion that death is the only original experience.
Yeah, he wanted people to embrace death, to become a being unto death. That's what he felt was really the challenge for people, to instead of death denial, which is where our culture's at. We just don't like it, we don't like to have it around, we just like to avoid it altogether. We don't even like talking about it. That hadith, which is actually probably a saying of Sayyidina Ali, it's attributed to the Prophet, but it's a true saying no matter what. But that hadith, and in its actual Arabic, he says, "An-nasu niyamu," people are asleep. فَإِذَا مَاتُوا انْتَبَهُوا. He didn't say istayqadu. He actually said they come to attention. So the sleep that we're in is more like a hypnagogic state, like the state kids go into when they're watching TV. There's a little experiment you can do with your kids when you have them, or with your brothers or sisters or nephews or nieces. When they're watching TV, just go up and do that in front of their faces, and you'll be amazed that it doesn't register. I've done it many times, so I've seen it work. It's an empirical study for me because I've done it several times. And you go in front like that, and they don't see it. You have to do it a couple times before they become aware that there's been an interruption. Because what television does, it puts you into a state, a hypnagogic state. It's really a passive receptive state. It's a sleep state. And your brain waves are very similar to meditation, interestingly enough. And that's why it's addictive. It's a soft addiction. Scientific America actually did a study, and they did determine that, not Scientific America, but it was published in Scientific America, and you can look that up. And actually, it was a front cover article, "Is Television an Addiction?" was the title. And scientists have concluded it is a soft addiction, because what happens is the waves of television and computer screens synchronize with the brain, so there's an entrainment. And the mind is actually relaxed. So people want that experience again and again, so it becomes like a drug. But it's a soft addiction because it's somewhat easy to break. I mean, soft addictions are not like heroin or something, but they're tough. Trust me, I mean, people say it's easy to give up tea, right, or coffee, right? And it is. I've done it many times. Right? But really, to give up a soft addiction is not an easy thing. Right? Is anybody addicted to games, those games, PlayStation? Because that's a real addiction. Did you play those games? Like how every day? 3 times. Did you used to play it every day? Yeah. Some people play an hour a day, literally. There's people who go on YouTube and just, before they know it, like 4 hours are gone, and they're watching a bunch of idiots themselves. I mean, the thing, YouTube is all based, it's like the pellet television's like this. You know that little thing you click? The remote. Yeah. See, rats, when they do the pellets, rats go and they knock and they give them a pellet. Well, they go back and they keep knocking, right? Because they think the pellet's going to come. Well, that's the whole basis of television. They'll have one really good program, and that's the pellet. And then they'll have days of junk. So you're sitting there waiting for the pellet. And then a good program comes, and then that's the way it works. You're basically just rats. It's the exact same principle, trust me. So, these are very sophisticated systems. And believe it or not, I mean, you can read about these studies that were done. But anyway, Game Boys, I mean, that's a good example of soft addiction. And it actually falls into a hard addiction category for some people because people have different type of personality. There are addictive personalities. For instance, gambling. 3% of people that gamble become compulsive gamblers. And they know that in the casinos. That's why they have really cheap food, and they do freebies, and they give you free drinks, and they do all these things because they want that 3%. They pay for all those freebies. Because once you're addicted, and that's why if you go to, like, I don't know about here, but in Las Vegas, if you go into those casinos, they actually have pawn shops for wedding rings. I mean, that's how bad it gets. People will pawn their wedding ring when they're gambling. So it destroys a lot of homes. But it's 3%. The other 97% are not going to become addicted that severely. It won't destroy their lives. It might cause a lot of damage, might break up a family, but you know, they can keep their jobs and whatever. So the Game Boys are like that. There's a lot of evidence that there's actually been suicides from Game Boys, believe it or not. Yeah, people have actually, they couldn't get to the highest level. They blew themselves away. So that idea of being in a hypnagogic state is like television. So reality, in a sense, is like watching a television program. Now, for most people, you know, there's different stations. So some people are tuned into the power station. So life becomes about acquisition of power, like Kissinger, he's on the power channel. And some people are on the greed station, right? So you can think of a whole slew of people on that station, like Halliburton CEOs. That's the channel they're watching. And then there's people on the lust station, right? They're just watching lust. I mean, that's their life. And then there's people on the food channel. And then there's people on the fashion channel. So there's all these different stations you can find, and some people switch around. They'll be on the lust station. If it's a little boring, they turn over to the fashion station, then they go back to the lust station. They can do that. But what that's talking about is actually turning the television off and stepping back and looking at what's really going on here. Because the world is a distraction. And that hadith is essentially about turning off the distraction, waking up before you die. And that's like in another hadith, we talk about that, the rule to die before you die, or do someone else how it is like Muslim, be as if already in your graves. Many examples of that. That's in a lot of religions, by the way, that motif. Anything else?
So, students have any questions? Please feel free to ask. Anyone else also? Feel free to ask any questions.
Any comments?
I don't know how accurate this is, but I also heard someone says when you see your soul goes to Allah and then it returns. I'm not sure about that.
Well, there's an idea that there's a departure, definitely. I mean, dreams in most traditions, and including the Islamic tradition, dreams are an indication of other worlds. And they're important because it allows people to realize that this is not the only reality. This is in the Chinese tradition, but also in the Islamic tradition, one of the Spanish Muslim scholars made the remark, I was a man, I went to sleep in dreamed I was a butterfly. And when I woke up, I had to ponder, am I a butterfly dreaming I'm a man? Which is also a statement by Hamza Yusuf. And so the idea being that reality is sometimes hard to discern. Many of us have had dreams where we were so convinced they were real that when we woke up, it's like, oh God, I was just dreaming. But it was very real, and that's to indicate the dreamlike nature of this experience. Now, one of the things about in the Quran, it says when you die, we have removed the veil from you. Now you can see with piercing sight, absolute clarity. So that's the idea that when people die, it'll be like waking up. It'll be very similar to what it's like to wake up. And that's why sleep is also considered a little death. That when you go to sleep, it's like dying, and then waking up is like resurrection. So every day you replicate this. And your life is like a day. And the seasons also represent this. The morning is like your youth. The midday is like your when you're young people, maturity. The afternoon is like your autumn years. And then the early night is like your old age. And then the end of the sleep is like your death. And then the waking up is your resurrection. So in a day, you replicate a mirror of your own life and the experience of life. And the same is true with the spring is like your youth. The summer is like your maturity from like 20 to 40, and then 40 to 60, and then winter, old age, and death. So you repeat it not only in the day, but throughout the year. These are all reminders. I mean, most traditional systems, they were put there to remind people about life, and so that they took life seriously. Anything else? You can ask, by the way, if you have any questions, it doesn't have to relate to the topic. If you have any questions about Islam, or what I think of YouTube or Google Video. Well, I became Muslim just turning 18, and I initially went to England, and then I went, my first trip was to Morocco. That was the first Muslim country I visited in 1978. And Morocco was very different then than it is now. The Muslim world has changed dramatically. Many of the traditional people are now dead. So I actually saw people that were still from a generation that couldn't speak French, that had never seen television. I mean, I was once in Algeria, in a small town called Lida, and I was walking with an elderly man, and he was a very religious man, and I was with his son, and we passed by a cafe, and I think I was about 21, and I asked if we could stop for a coffee, and we did. We had coffee, and as we were leaving, his son told me that's the first time my father's ever sat in a cafe. And his father considered cafes to be places for heedless people that just wasted their time. And so he just never sat there. But he was so polite that because I was asking, he didn't want to. So he didn't say anything to me. You know, he just sat with me, and I had the coffee. He didn't have it. So, but I mean, I loved it. I was in West Africa. I lived with nomadic people. I actually traveled on camel, not for fun, but because that's the way they still travel in those places. That's changing too. When I went to Mauritania in the early 80s, it's radically changed now. Now that a lot of the Bedouin have beads, and when I was there, they still really did use camels. So, but I lived in a traditional tent. When the wind came and blew it away, went, picked up, put it back together. I always wondered why they just didn't build houses, but that's why they're Bedouin, because they don't live in houses. Anything else?
Can you talk a little bit about your experience with the institute that you started in the United States as far as teaching?
Okay. I have a seminary in California, which is called Zaytuna. If you're interested, you can look at it. It's zaytuna.org, Zaytuna. Shaykh.org. And it's when I came back to the U.S., I was overseas. I'd studied about 10 years in traditional madrasa training. And when I came back, I actually went back to university and did 2 different degrees. One was in religious studies, the other was in nursing. And what I noticed was I didn't see any schools here for just training people in traditional Islam, but also in a way that made it relevant for the living here in this country. There are some schools, like in the Deoband tradition, you have some South Asian schools, but they just teach the same curriculum they use in Deoband or in Lahore or Karachi. There's no real attempt to how do we make this viable for people living here, because they have very different traditions. So that was the idea behind it, just trying to train people here in traditional sciences of Islam. By sciences, I don't mean like chemistry, sciences in previous sense, things you know.
For me,
Yeah, that's a TV station.
yeah, I was also
We did one this year.
yeah.
We're working on something, yeah. I'm actually trying to do something here. I'm trying to convince some people here to do what I did with the Arabs, bringing them here. I'm trying to get them to do a program here, taking Americans through the Arab world. And so Americans can see, there's no, how many people saw a session on Fox News the other day? Wow, bad.
We don't watch TV.
Good for you. I'm watching because I wanted to know what they were saying. There's a couple of different people. And I want to see what they have to say. I don't have television in my house, but I was having trouble and I was totally fun. I did want to watch. I do occasionally when I travel, look at Fox News to see what they're up to. And it's amazing what they get up to. They call Fox. They're already letting you know. Fox is kind of he was the mischief maker in Aesop's Fables. He's kind of clever ones, always tricking everybody. Clever like a fox. So, but sessions just, if you didn't know anything about the Arab world, you'd be convinced that the Arab world was like Nazi Germany in the 30s right now. And that they were as dangerous. They actually had pictures of Arabs going like this, like raising their hand. And then they would superimpose Nazis doing just amazing to do. It's not fair to do that to people. Because the Nazis were very organized. And the Arabs are the most unorganized people. So to compare the two at that level is just not fair. Right? Seriously, it's just not fair. The Nazis were at cutting edge of technology. The Arabs don't have technology. They don't. They have Western technology. It's all imported from the West. They have no indigenous technology other than like those coffee pots. And those are actually really nice. Those ones? Arabs don't have technology. Seriously, think of one modern Arab invention. Can anybody? I mean, even to get to space, they had to hitch a ride with NASA. Remember Prince Sultan? And somebody said, when you have money like that, you can take your vacation anywhere. So he was the Arab astronaut. So, and the same is true with, Pakistan, I think they do have one major contribution. They actually invented the computer virus. So, trust me, there's no threat. The only threat from the Arab world is all the weapons that the West sells them. Right? I mean, they cause mischief with that, but it's mischief. It's not like, did you know that Arab F-16s that are sold in F-14 don't work against Israeli F-16s? Yeah. Literally, it's actually, it's corporate welfare. That's all it is. It's corporate welfare. It's just so people in Southern California can keep their jobs. So we have a defense industry, right? That's what all your income tax, if you pay income tax, is all just interest on the national debt and defense. Not going to schools, highways, hospitals, none of it. Just defense. Right? That's our number one industry in this country. Defense. Bigger than automobiles. Don't you think that's wrong? What do you think? Do you what our defense budget is in relation to all the other countries on the planet? Do you know how big it is? Do you have any idea?
Isn't it more than all countries combined?
By 9 times. Isn't that kind of overkill? Do we really need that much hardware? But when you have a defense industry, and that's how they make their money, and there's all these people lobbying in Washington to make sure those defense contracts are done, that's how it works. That's why I was very happy to see that corruption was the main concern of people coming out of the polls, because hopefully people will wise up to that. You have to educate yourself. Benjamin Franklin, when he came out of the Continental Congress, a woman in the streets of Philadelphia said to him, "What type of country do we have?" He said, "A Republican, if you can keep it." Right? And Thomas Jefferson said that, because then they called it a republic, not a democracy, right? Representational government. But he said a democracy was based on education. If you did not have an educated populace, you could not maintain a democracy. It's just not possible. People have to be educated. Most people don't know what's going on. Everything's kind of fine. Things are going along. You know, I don't really have any problems in my life. And so these guys, meanwhile, are just ripping you guys off. Because they're greedy, venal people. They wine and dine them. They give them lots of money. They've got lobbyists that, I mean, that's what's happening. That's what's happening when people just begin to ignore and neglect their civic responsibility. If you're ever called for jury duty, don't get out of it. Seriously, don't get out of it. Go. Don't call in sick. Don't say you have get some thing that you're in university and you have to go. Because if you're ever on trial, you don't want all the people that couldn't get out of jury duty or needed the $5 a day that they give them. Right? You don't want those type of people sitting on your jury. Right? Now, do you know one really interesting fact about juries in this country? The jury is the only institution in the United States of America that is above the law. There's no other institution in this country that's above the law. Do you know why the Founding Fathers wanted the jury to be above the law? And do you know what I mean by above the law? In other words, the jury can find a person not guilty, even if they think they're actually guilty. Now, do you know why they did that? Anybody? Take a stab. Harvard. You gotta stop wearing that T-shirt. Anybody? The biggest fear that they had was overzealous governments that began to persecute their citizens. And so they didn't want prosecution to have that type of power where they could accuse somebody of something. They wanted to put that in the people's hands so that there was always the ability of the people to override the government. And they did it in juries. That's why you have to have a grand jury indictment for a felonious crime. It's a very interesting system. It's a very sophisticated system to protect your rights. It's the average person. And we don't even know our system. Before the Civil War, they actually used to have to tell the jury that. And you know why they stopped doing that? Does anybody know? They actually used to have to tell you that you have a right, even if you think he is guilty, you have a right to acquit him and say that he's not guilty. They used to have to tell them that. And you know why they changed that? Because of the slaves. Because when slaves would run away to free states, and then they'd be put on trial, a lot of people on those juries would find them not guilty. And so they stopped doing that. But that is a right. You can read that in any good textbook on the rights of the jury and why they have those rights. So those type of things you guys need to really learn. To keep, we're losing what we have, by the way, if you haven't noticed. Seriously, we're losing it. You don't believe it, but it's happening. So, anything else? My conversion? Yeah, I had probably a classical conversion. terms of social psychology, it pretty follows the patterns of classic conversion experience. I mean, I had a car accident with a head-on collision, which got me thinking about life and death and after death. And I was raised in Catholic schools and in Orthodox Christianity, but I had the good fortune of having a mother who told me early on that the only reason that you're an Orthodox Christian is because you were born in this house. Whereas if you were born in Sri Lanka, you'd be a Buddhist. And so she said, so don't ever assume that, this is necessarily the only thing, or that this is necessarily the truth. It has more to do with just an arbitrary fact. Like if you were born in Egypt or Jordan, you were raised in a Muslim family, they told you, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. That's what they told you. You grew up as a little kid saying that. A lot of Arabs or Muslims have never even thought about it. Is it true or not? They just assume it has to be true. That's what my dad and mom told me. And the same is true for Jews. That's what Imam al-Ghazali said. He said he noted that children that were Jewish grew up to be Jews, children that were Christians grew up to be Christian, children that were Hindus grew up to be Hindus, and Muslims grew up to be Muslims. So he wanted to look for himself to see who's true, who's right. So I did a study of all the different religions, and the one that made the most sense to me personally was Islam. So, but I like all the religions, and I've learned, I did my university training was in comparative study, religious studies, so I've learned a lot from other traditions, and I particularly like Orthodox Christianity and Buddhism.
In light of institutions like property, put out all this kind of misinformation about Islam, about Muslims, how would you suggest that Muslim schools are changing the perception that we have in this country of the world?
Well, part of it is just talking to people. I find this learning about other people diffuses a lot of things. We have 15,000 Pakistani doctors in the United States. So when David Letterman says, I went to my doctor today and he said face Mecca and cough. A lot of people got that joke because people have had Muslim doctors. Now I find it very odd if you're really afraid of Muslims. What the hell are you doing going to a Muslim doctor? Right? Seriously, think about that. It's crazy. Put your life in a Muslim doctor's hands. Well, you have to trust them. So a lot of Muslims have not done their duty in just letting people know who they are in this country. And we haven't, we need to amplify our voices in a positive way. I wouldn't, not in a preachy kind of way. Traditionally, Muslims were not preachers. They weren't proselytizers. They were people that lived very virtuous and upright lives, and other people saw that and got interested through behavior. And that's definitely the way the Prophet Muhammad was. He did not preach to people. He used to tell them about Islam, but he did not preach to them. And if they were interested, if they weren't, that was fine too. And the word in Arabic that is translated as proselytization is da'wah. And da'wah means invitation. Invitation is open to rejection. If I invite you to dinner, you can say, hey, you know what? I'd rather not. And that's fine. And I might get offended, but I shouldn't. Because if it was a genuine invitation, it's open to rejection.
The Islam world there is a kind of disagreement about how far and how much we can apply to Jihad. What are your perception?
Well, ijtihad in Islamic legal tradition is how to reason new problems out, or look at older problems that they're coming consensus on. And ijtihad is necessary. It's in every book of usul. I studied in my training, I studied 4 texts in usul with teachers. Every one of them had a chapter called Bab al-Ijtihad, the chapter of ijtihad. But it has conditions and it has rules, and if you don't follow the rules and conditions, you can't do it. But if you follow the rules and conditions, it's a perfectly valid system. So, like now, female prayer, leading was something recently that came up because of Dr. Wadud led the prayer in New York. And people have done that before. There's people even prayer. My position, I learned, I was trained in Maliki fiqh, and it's just not a valid prayer in the way I was trained. Am I going to, jump up and down, and you can't do that? It's not what I was taught. There is an opinion. Imam Tabari thought it was valid. Abu Thawr thought it was valid. Imam Muzani and the Shafi'i Madhab thought it was valid. Ibn Taymiyyah thought it was valid in the Fatawa if it was in Nafila, not in Fard. So there are scholars that permitted it. So it's not a mujma' alayh, whereas it wasn't what I was taught, and I feel more comfortable with the classical position of the five schools that we have now, the Maliki, Shafi'i, Hanafi, Hanbali, and the Zaydi Jafari.
So, what would be a Muslim identity in today's time? And how much assimilation would you recommend?
I'm very wary of those type of ideas like Muslim identity. I just don't believe it. I don't think people walk around wondering, what's my identity? Am I a Muslim? I don't think they do that. I think they have confusion because they're not educated and they haven't made firm decisions about things. And that's another problem. That's not so much an identity problem. For me, my core identity is to attempt as best as I'm able to be in a state of submission. That's my core identity. And that's what Muslim means. Somebody who is attempting to submit to God. So that's what I'm attempting to do in my life, to the best of my ability. I don't always do it, and there's things that I fall short of. That's human nature. But that's my attempt. And so my understanding is framed around that, in attempting to do that to the best of my ability. There's other people that's not their level of commitment. So they might see themselves, I'm a Muslim, but I drink, I smoke, whatever, That means that their core identity is not really Muslim, it's facet. So that's a choice that they make. And if you believe in all the things that are told, that has consequences. So it's up to people to choose where they want to have the central core of their being. Like being an American is not my central core, but I'm an American. But it's not the center. It's not at my core. It can't be, because when I die, it's not about being American it's about being a human being going back to the Lord. So that's much more in my line of thinking. But being an American, and I actually prefer to think of my state, that I'm actually from the state of California. And I'd like to see the state secede from the federal government, because we need to stop giving them money. I'm not joking. Anything else? Well, I want to thank all of you and the class for coming. Wish you all the best, and I'll put in a good word for the future.
Hamza Yusuf, a round of applause.
This is something from the Muslim Student Association. So, from all of us to Shaykh Hamza to remember us, and thank you for this beautiful lecture. Thanks for everyone for coming, and also see you.
I want you to be a witness of me asking for
But he said he's not going to come to River. Why he's not coming? The day I told you about the four monitors, my brother gave it to the Islamic State. I told him, I said, why? I just told someone. And he said, well, I'm going to have more.
Jamil, this is what I mean.